welcome back to the Ars Morata podcast, new show, Abundance in the Land of Women. I want to say before we go deeper into this topic that um, we'd love to hear your insights and reflections and your takeaways and your questions to the podcast. So wherever you're watching from, if you have a comment section underneath, please let us know what you think, or if you have suggestions, or if you have a takeaway, because in a way, there's many things happening in this podcast. That's our intention for it. But one of them is almost like you're coming into a coaching session with Zan and we put a theme on the table and give it a good turning over. So a challenge to you is to write down your insights and what you're taking away, and even how you might apply some of this stuff to your own life. And it's fun for us to read through some of that stuff. And if you have a concrete suggestion or a question for us or a theme you would like to explore, then send it in to us as well. We're behind the scenes, we're compiling a bit of an episode list of the topics that we fancy going into, stuff that we haven't explored before, and things that we know a lot of men are actually going through right now in this period of time. So hit comments, or if you're listening through audio, you can email us at info@arsamorata.com and leave some of your feedback and your questions for us there. Zan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm awake and ready for this glorious day.
Drinking your coffee?
Yeah, I'm drinking my coffee through a straw because I had teeth whiteners on last night, so I'm drinking through a straw. So
That explains that, if you're watching. Um, so I gave that little preamble, and today we have a question from a viewer. So
okay.
the theme of today's podcast is going to be something that came in to us, and I've had a day or two to think this over a little bit, so that there's some answers that I'd like to share. But you said you want to be put on the spot when it came to the podcast, so we'll put it to you right here. You haven't heard this question before. I mean, you probably
Oh.
have, but here it comes. It's going to be a surprise. The question came to us, and it's around the topic of empathy for women. How do I develop
Hmm.
empathy for women?
Hmm.
And I think it's worth adding a bit of context. Um, the idea is we've pretty much all been disappointed or let down or had a sense of betrayal at some point in the past. And that pain can linger. And depending on what you've been through and how that feels and how you make sense of it, a person, a man or a woman reflecting on her views of what men are, we can easily find ourselves in echo chambers where the friends we speak to and the things that we hear when we're online can reconfirm, let's
Hmm.
say, more negative or entrenching perspectives that might uh, erode any sense of empathy that we have for the opposite
Hmm.
sex. And I mean, just to be frank, some of the dating advice out there is well intentioned and quite positive, but there is a sense of defensiveness or a bit of cynicism built into it. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there are some channels with absolute misogyny that's being perpetuated. So depending on what you see or what kind of places you've hung out,
Hmm.
you can take on a lot of um, confirmation bias or deeper programming about who women are and who men are and how we should interact with each other to get what we want. But this question comes in, and specifically the question asks, how can I develop my empathy for the opposite sex?
Um, that's an interesting question. Number one is do you like women? It's a fundamental thing, right? Men who love women are loved by women is the quote I always say. And it's really a subset of men that just really just like the idea of women. We talked about it before in another podcast, I think.
Yeah.
But empathy, for me, um, and I'm not this altruistic, holistic guy. I'm selfish as anybody else. But when there's something in me that looks at the long stretch, the overarching. meaning of things. I really reflect a lot. I live a contemplative life. Like contemplative life used to be the desert Christians and stuff that they're going to monasteries and for the rest of their lives they just live in contemplation. uh, I'm kind of like that. Um, I think a lot on the broad spectrum motivation that we talked about last time, what things mean. And when I see a woman, my first impulse, not consciously, but my first impulse is to imagine that she's trying to figure it out too. She's trying to have a good
Mm.
life. She's trying to be funny. She's trying to be interesting, and she's trying to hope that people will like her, same as me. Um, that's my default to think that to go to that spectrum, and I imagine it like this, and this is just my own contemplative warped mind. It's like I that woman who I just met, for instance, at one point she was a little girl that her mother and father loved, perhaps, hopefully, and they hoped that she'd have a good life going forward. They prayed for her life, that she would be happy and healthy and in shape and meet a good guy and there was that hopefulness around her when she was a little girl. And so it's hard for me to put it in words, but I still have that kind of feeling that there's should be a hopefulness around that person, that there should be that there should be my default is to like the person until they demonstrate that they're not likable, which a lot of people do. And then you could say, well, but if you get past that hard shell or that bitchy behavior, then she's probably that scared little girl. I get it, but I don't have time to save the world. What am
Mm.
I going to do? So I really like a woman when I first meet her until she demonstrates that it's not worth my time, I guess.
Mm.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm answering that question. That's a
I,
tough
I,
one.
I think it's important that you start out by saying this. I don't have time to save the world because some people do look at your message and think, wow, Zan, if he loves all women, then he must be loving. Since, so many women are such and such these days, then he must have an infinite heart of compassion, but also a projection that everyone is a treasured princess and,
Hmm.
is an angel untrammeled on this earth.
Hmm.
And maybe you live behind these incredibly
Yeah.
strong rose tinted glasses,
Yeah.
but you're suggesting that's not quite true,
No, not at all.
despite
And I,
despite how florid and
yeah,
your perspective of once upon a time there was hope around this person,
yeah. I
and we
want someone
start
to
out we
go ahead,
we
Jordan.
start out yeah we start out with that sense of hope.
I do because I want people to be elevated when they meet me. I want people to like me and to think, okay, that was nice to meet that guy. And so I want that same expression for others. Um, but I just I but I like I said, I'm not this loving kindness, benevolent soul. I'm just as warped as the next person. It's not like I have elevated myself to this agape
Right.
level of brotherly love and not at all. I but I start out with that because number one, I like women, and when I see a woman, I think, I like her. That's a woman. So that's my default, and then quite often it's there's nothing there to move forward to, or in fact you move away from it because it's just not my style. So
Hmm.
yeah, I'm not a savior of any kind.
Okay, so you
Shit.
say you haven't elevated yourself to an abiding form of agape love for all beings and all women under all circumstances, but you do in a way try. So I'm curious about this perspective. Like at one point there was hope around this person before she develops behavior patterns, shells,
Yes.
reactivity towards men or around whoever. You start out and there's something in you that recognizes that, but do you choose that lens and perspective and put it on as you're looking at a woman? I mean, I'm sure you don't sit there and visualize for 10 minutes, be, behind every adult there was once a
She's in a
behind every
swing,
broken adult there was one, let me tune
pigtails.
open up my heart and tune back into the field of agape. I take it you're not doing that, but it sounds like you're doing
No,
something. Like how do you remember? Is there a way that you remember this kind of perspective as a way to increase your empathy? Or is it just completely automatic and you only think about these things in contemplative moments?
no, I think it's for me it's um the idea of not being included, because I was not included when I was a boy.
Yeah.
I was cast aside, and not included is the best phrase I know how to put on that. And the idea of judgment, judgmentalism, if that's a word, judgmentalism is the worst quality a man or woman can have. To judge another, to say, I don't like that girl. Why? I don't like the way she's dressed. How can he possibly say that? She's got a tattoo. I don't like her. How can you possibly say that? How's that? How's that come out of your being? You don't know. You don't know her story, you know? So for me, it's like, I mean, we were poor as kids, and we we lived on a dairy farm when I was a little boy. We'd have to milk the cows before we went to school. And we got sent home several times because we smelled like the barn. And the other kids would pick on us. And we were poor, so I had hand-me-down clothes with holes in them for my brothers. And I was picked on in school, and we were laughed at because we smelled like the barn. We had to milk the dairy cows before we went to school,
Mm.
and then we have to get them after school and milk them again. And um, and I remember being embarrassed a lot. And I remember my mom, struggled to raise us six kids by herself, and in the northern British Columbia after the dairy farm, and we were just kind of this family that was not the cool family. We had no money. We weren't rich, and we were kind of poverty to a degree. Even though my mom beautifully kept the houses clean, and she really took care of us, and she cooked for all of us and stuff like that. But it's like but the outside world would make not mock us, but just kind of we weren't included. I was the last one picked on a sports team. They were picking up to Jordan, Serene, and then I was the last kid picked because anyway. I became athletic later in life, but man, when I was young, when I was a little boy, I was not included. I know what it feels like. That's what I'm trying to say. I know what it feels like to not be included. If you come to my studio or my apartment, and there's a gathering of people, say there's 8 people in the apartment, and everyone's having fun and having a conversation. I see Jordan sitting off to the side, and no one's talking to you. I can't abide it. I can't abide that guy. So I was stopped all the conversation, stop the guy in mid joke, and I say, Jordan, come here. Did you meet this girl yet? And I pull everything in the center like a conductor. I have to have everybody feel included in my sphere, and not because I'm benevolent, not because I've attained some higher strata of enlightenment. Not at all. I just know what it feels like to not be included into and to be ignored, and I just can't abide it in my presence. So I have that automatically for women. So it's an
Mm.
automatic thing. It's not something I think, oh, what about her? I just think, she's here too. I I see, I tell the story that, that we're in the club and I'm with these guys, and there's a table of hot girls over there, and they're all drinking shots, and all the and short skirts, and all the guys are like, whoa, 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 kind of like angling over toward trying to maybe go and talk to them. And right over my shoulder were these two other girls, kind of in the dark on the wall, that were not as pretty as those girls, not in shape like those girls. But they're standing there with their drinks. And I look at them, and they dressed up. They went to each other's house before the bar and said, "No, don't try it on. Try this one on." No, they did each other's hair, their makeup. They tried on different clothes, and they were excited to try on these clothes. Yeah, that's perfect for you. And they came out, and all my guys are ignoring them. And they came to be they want to meet people too. They want to be pretty. They want to feel pretty. And I just, there's something in me that I have to include them. So I invited those two girls. It's just one singular example out of many. I said, you girls come have a drink. This is my friends, Jordan, and this is so and so. And not because I'm trying to pick them up, but because I want them, because they came to be noticed too. How could you leave that aside? I don't know.
Would you say you were conditioned for empathy, going through all these experiences and embarrassment, as you say,
I
shaped by your
I
upbringing too?
I think so. You know what I really have a soft spot for is authenticity. When not in the word, not in the way we're using that word today, but the idea that like I meet a woman and she's kind and she's sweet and she means well and all the other women don't, I don't like her. I just can't this it's I automatically have a soft spot for the underdog and for um for someone who's sincere. If she's sincere, I don't care. I will include her with me. I'll invite her. I don't care what anybody thinks. I just don't care. If she's sincere and she's not trying to, well, she doesn't have judgment in her. That spirit of to be judgmental, I just can't abide it around me. I mean, like I've done it, I've, I just, I just can't have it around me. Like the opposite of judgment is generosity of spirit. And if you can't have that with others, then you can't have it with yourself. So it's like, yeah, the idea of judgment, I think is the worst human trait, the worst. To judge another. Wow.
So I grew up on the
Without
other.
evidence.
So I grew up on the other side of the street. So um,
Wrong side of the
inside
tracks.
the other side of the tracks, let's say. I grew up in the aspect, I think, of all definitely Western societies where your sense of worth is based on your performance. So I was in the sports team. I was literally the worst player in the sports team, but because I hung around it, they seemed to always pick me. It's like the last one on the team sheet, but I was on it. Um, and then in the subset of those on whom great expectations were pushed, and it's like if you're excelling, if you're in the top 10% of your class, we expect you to fight for places in the top colleges and so on.
Yeah.
And my group of friends were all that sports and grades, but also mean, like actually
Mean.
good guys. But we had a culture of meanness which pervaded all of us in a way from beyond our control. So there's a sense of if people at school are bullying
Mm.
you or laughing at you because of where you came from, well, what's the mindset of the people that are doing that? And why does the rest of society want to play this kind of outcast game or meritocracy game or who's got value in the social system? And
Yeah.
and the boys that I was with at school were like I said, in a way, good guys, but in a bigger way, actually mean, quite often, and a lot of the time. And from that place, it's a long, long road back to generosity of spirit and to empathy, where the eyes through which you see other people are eyes of complete judgment. And I remember, our meanness probably hit a peak around 14, 15, 16 years old.
Mm.
But it's like
Yeah.
coming across another person and literally the shoes that they would wear to school and the bag that everyone wore a school uniform. So that actually in our college took away from the severity of some of the judgment, right? If it's free form, you can wear your own clothes, and the in group are wearing high fashion, no one else can afford it. But like it was just the shoes and the bag, and we would look at a new kid that moved into the class, and it's like, what shoes are you wearing? What bag is he wearing? How's he doing for grades? How does he kick a football? Okay, outcast, at least to our group.
Sure.
And yeah, I just think this is the way, and I think this is the way so many of us grow up. Your performance and your status equals your rank, And
Hmm.
every culture has got their own version of doing that. The English culture is very severe in its way. The American one, I can see that. Other countries in Europe, I've seen it. Um, but I had my particular one, and it was a long, long way back to then discover what is actually empathy when this has been the conditioning.
So interesting. You know, and I didn't necessarily go through the normal public school, high school, 14, 15, 16-year-old social kind of bypassed a lot of that because I was, not really going to accredited proper school after 13 years old. But I remember maybe I was just because I was a geek. Maybe it's just automatic that I'm empathetic. I remember when I was first grade, I went to school and I was unloved in my mind because from the age of 3.5 to 5.5, I was in foster homes, um, with away from my brothers and sisters. And I don't know at that age, you don't know why you're cast aside. And I was locked in closets, and I was shunted aside. I was only allowed in the bedroom. I couldn't go into the living room, and I was moved to different homes, foster homes. And my earliest memories are foster homes, and they were mean to me. The people were mean, and I was a quiet, scared little kid. And when I went to first grade, I got back together with my mother, and I went to first grade, and there's this kid came up to me, and everybody was ignoring me, ignoring me, ignoring me, because I was shy, quiet kid. And this kid came up to me with big, thick glasses, and he said, "Will you be my friend?" And his name was Randy Sorensen. Everyone called him Sore Nuts. Randy Sore Nuts. First grade. And and he and I'll never forget that. He came up and said and offered to like me. Never
Hmm.
forgotten that. And we were friends. And we were the nerds, and we were cast aside, um but it's just something that was born in me. I don't know, maybe some psychologist would slap it out of me or something, or maybe there's some deficit to it because but I'm not soft. I'm not weak. And I did sports later in life, like I said, and I'm not blue. There's a term in psychology, I think, where someone's really blue. They really have a lot of empathy and a lot of caring, and they feel your pain, and they weep up a lot. I don't do that. I'm not that guy, you
Right.
know. I don't I'm very excited and let's go. Like, and I don't believe in therapy the way we use it today, that we need to resolve our childhoods. I don't believe that at all. Um, I believe for trauma and real psychological issues and depression, yes, therapy is fantastic and necessary and life-giving. But for just because we're sad, we need to talk to a therapist. I think it messes up more than it helps us. So, um, yeah, I don't know.
Well, you were wondering, is there a deficit to the way that I grew up? And I think actually, possibly you escaped the generalized objectivizing programming that we have. And what I see is that I work with a lot of men that could say they are winners in the classic sense, or they have tried winning the game. And it sets them up for an incredible uh, lifelong pattern of objectivizing themselves and each other, right? So if I'm comparing myself to everybody
Yeah,
else that I meet, depending on the clothes that I wear or what my wage slip is saying or what assets I've got behind me or what I do at the weekend and where was my latest vacation, where are my photos, and how many followers have I got?
yeah,
If I'm on the objectivization cycle, first of all, I'm objectivizing myself, i.e., my merit is only good when things are going up. And if I'm having a bad time, I've got nothing to post, then I suck. So that's a lot of suffering. But then when it comes to dating relationships, these men have a horrible hard time because if I
yeah,
have a self-image that I have to be perfect and I can't kind of go out of this very small box that I've designed for myself, which is a box of identity. If I stay inside the box of my identity, no one's going to
mm,
ridicule me. But if I start blurting and being a bit weird or doing something strange at weekends, or I have, I don't know, one bad CD in my music collection, all my mates are going to take the mick out of me for that, right? I'm so constrained. It limits how I show up, but also it limits the women that I choose. And I think one of the biggest difficulties for men that I have in my practice is, I want to find a woman to be with, but I literally can't find her because the box that she has to fit is so minute. Because every woman out there has got a
Yeah.
reason for rejection. If she wears the wrong coat or the wrong
Yeah.
handbag or speaks in the wrong dialect or something with her hair is not like the most trendy thing that the latest model is wearing, it's like that everyone gets rejected. And so and you feel it energetically in a person, someone who has really not found their empathy is living in kind of behind judgmental eyes.
Yes. It's
It,
all judgment. It's all judging others on appearances or assumptions. We make assumptions, you know? We assume all kinds of things about another person just because of the way they look, for instance. And we make up a story that we believe about that person. And then we live, I mean, maybe that's a protection mechanism. Maybe we have to. I mean, Kant wrote an entire thesis on the idea of taste and judgment and critique. And you have to critique things. You have to say, this is good, this is not good, this is tasteful, this is not tasteful. Otherwise, everything just keeps slamming in our face, right? Um, so maybe that's a mechanism that you navigate your world because that person is demonstrating with their camouflage, whatever that they're not worthy of my time and attention, and so you can narrow down your bandwidth. And I guess I don't know. I don't walk over and reach out to every person, but if they're sincere, then I really like them. If there's some sincerity I don't know how to say it. It's strange. I don't know. I have a lot like a soft spot for the underdog. Zan's home for wayward girls. Can I say? Yeah,
I
it's
think
interesting.
of all, it's good to have standards, but of all the prisons that I see men in, the one of the most painful ones that costs them the most to get out of is pickiness.
Uh, yeah, 100%. I mean, I'll say this. This is going to sound crude, but it's real. The guys who get a lot of women that we saw in college and this kind of stuff, we had a roommate, for instance, who is not in shape, not tall, didn't have any money, just kind of slob, didn't dress well. What the heck? But he's always has women. Women are always drawn to him. We couldn't figure it out. It's because number one, they like women. They're happier when the women are around than when they're not around. That's not every man, that's for sure. Everybody says, "Oh, I like women." No, you don't. Not like that. And they are equal opportunists. In other words, they're not to put it in a vulgar way, but you get the essence. They're not pussy snobs. There's men that are pussy snobs that they would just say, oh, I don't like that. I'm waiting for the Instagram model to come my way.
Yeah.
And all these other women that are around, they ignore them. And I tell you, the guy who's banging the Instagram model that you're envious about is doing so because he's not, he banged every girl that came near him, or he tried to, or he's like happy to, or would like to, and it's felt by women. Women can feel, women can smell that on a man. If a man is like a, a 2 year dry spell with intimacy with a woman because he's waiting for that right he's judging others, judging them
Yeah.
all. Women are not attracted to him. It's the way it goes.
So interesting that you say that the one who is sleeping with all the highly prized models and such is also not snobbish at all and equal opportunities.
Yeah, he likes women and like,
So
hey,
data.
not really my
Yeah.
type, but she's cute, she's sweet, she's kind. She wants to have a glass of wine. Yeah, I'm going to do that. They do that because they like the experience. They want to full throat into the experience of life. They want to feel, and they want her to have a good time too. So that's what the guys are getting that all the other men are envying.
What I think the pickiness, and you said it as a defense mechanism, what I think the pickiness is really about is saying if you've grown up in a culture of meanness or of objectivization, or where you feel that in order to preserve your self-image or your social image, you need a woman that that is a particular way, you have a very narrow band of how she looks, how she shows up, what she does in her life, intelligence, income, all that kind of stuff, then a lot of men like this will look out at the vaster world of women, and rather than enjoy them for what they actually have and bring to the table, they will judge and exclude, but also feel an element, they've conditioned an element of disgust that has them flinch, like, oh no, I couldn't be associated with a woman like that.
Right.
And there might be, in their dreams, they might then go home and then really have a lot of passion or desire. But the mind is so strong at suppressing that and thinking, oh no,
Yeah.
actually, that's not one for me. I have to exclude it on this basis. And then I'm going to keep on searching for this alabaster girl in
Yes.
spite of the fact that I am excluding 99% of the options around me who would be really reasonable women for me if I would let this protection down. And I think at the end of the day, what is being protected? Everyone who is picky or doesn't feel abundant has to make this discovery for themselves. But I think it's schoolyard stuff. People talk about early life trauma as being the most formative, but I think there's stuff that happens between
Mm.
11 and about 18, 12 and 6, like those years, because that's when you
Yeah.
try and get your first kiss, your first broken heart, your first rejection, you're really happy you got a girlfriend, and the rest of the football team comes by and berates you for your choice,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like all that stuff happens, and the grip of those teenage years is astonishing. I'm working with men in their 40s that are like, oh, I would do this in my life, but I remember this boy from school when I was 16. He would tell me this right now, and all of me seizes up. You know, I go there and I can't breathe. I'm a 40-year-old man. I can't breathe properly. I can't remember what I'm going to say next because I have this remnant of a voice in my head that's saying, you know, hurling an insult at me because I've chosen this kind of woman or I'm going for this.
So interesting. Yeah. I mean, oof. Um,
I, I think we're going deep into the causes of why more of us don't have more empathy. So I hope
well, it's
we're
quite a
answering
question.
somewhat the question so far. I could. There's a couple of things I want to say on the topic actually. So I was giving some thought.
Okay.
Um, I had a teacher at one point in time, and she used to speak about a different model. And she said, well, there's three words to explore here. There's sympathy, there's empathy, and there's compassion. And
Oh,
these, in a way, you could see them as stepping stones towards, you know, the more expansive, the deeper, more loving
okay.
relationship with women or with anyone. Um, and so I think if you're looking to cultivate empathy, a first place to stop would be sympathy. And my teacher was damning about sympathy. She said, well, actually, this is kind of, you're in your head a little bit. You don't feel that much. It's a bit dismissive. It's not very transformative. But I think sympathy can be useful
Is it
in a way
pity?
that sympathy is not pity and it's not fawning and it's not gushing and it's not any of these things. I would say
Okay.
in a more philosophical context, sympathy is when I just pause and I slow down and I hear the other person's experience, their point of view, their philosophy, their
Yeah.
conclusion on a matter, and I hear it out. And then I might even repeat back what they said to me and just say, have I understood it? Have I got it? These are the principles that you're saying. Have I understood that? So you're creating a charitable frame of mind within yourself. You're
Within
choosing a
you.
posture of philosophical kindness, which is
Uh,
I'm going to listen. I'm going to ask you the question. So, what's it like for you? Say I've got problems with empathy with women. What's it like for you as a woman and your dating experience and your relationship experience with men? What's that like? And what do you think of men? And what do you think is needed for a good relationship? And so if she tells me those answers, I will just listen, and I won't use fragments of her answers to kind of defeat her in an argument or to
okay.
later berate her. I'm not going to use what she says to argue or justify or stop or tear down. I'm just going to stop and see if I can take on board her whole philosophy on the matter and have some space for that.
Okay.
So in the
So
past,
so
I
that
used,
so it's
yeah,
but it's internal to you. It's a way of thinking about the other that
Yeah.
that has a listening element, right? That's being letting them feel seen.
Yes.
That's sympathy.
It's listening. I don't have to feel. I don't have
Yeah.
to like be
Okay.
touched or gush open or anything. Oh my God, I don't have to have any reaction. It's almost mentally, philosophically taking on board another person's worldview
Gotcha.
and hearing that without trying to destroy their argument or propose my one back, just holding space. So in the past, people would say, well, he's a sympathizer of the communists. And then the
Uh-huh.
zealots would come around and label him a commie, but that wasn't necessarily true. It's just like saying, look, I read the Communist Manifesto. I hear what these people are saying. I just have some philosophical space for that. I see where they're coming from. I also see they might have some problems down the road. I'm not going to vote for them or sign up for their party, but I have some
Mm.
sympathy for their cause.
Okay. Gotcha. Makes sense to me.
So I
Yeah.
think this is a first step. If you are struggling with empathy for women or struggling with your own, as you asked the question earlier on, do you like women? Well, a lot of men listening to this, truthfully speaking, are thinking, actually, I'm ambivalent. Part of me likes them, part of me doesn't. I can't find anything in me that likes them, and yet
Yeah.
I'm reading your book and I'm listening to your podcast, and I want to. It's a really strange place. I don't feel the part of me that likes women because I only feel like the hurt and the disappointment and the anguish that I've been through, and yet something in me is asking the question, how do I develop more empathy for women? That's cool. Just asking the
Sure.
question rather than saying like how can I get the good stuff I want from women and not have all the negative side, dispense with the
Yeah.
mistreatment. How can I guard myself from the negative consequences but get the sex or get some nice trophy looking girl? Just to say how can I cultivate empathy for women is beautiful question,
Yeah. That's a good
even
question.
even though I don't feel the part of me that likes them yet.
But that's a yearning question. That's a yearning, I would say. You're seeking, which is a good quality to have. You want to
Yeah.
know. You don't know and you would like to know. That's a good quality. So I like that guy. That guy I would like.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
He's starting off, he's on his way just by asking that
Yeah, he
question,
wants
right?
to know. Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's good.
I, I propose having sympathy, and the tool that we teach in Ars Amorata is curiosity, which is what are women
Yeah.
in your environment saying about men? What have they experienced with men? And what's their philosophy, worldview? What do they think is a good approach for them with men? And just hearing that out and just
Yeah.
repeat it back. I hear that that's what you're going through. Um, and I think
That's
with a
sympathy,
space,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
a space of philosophical charity, I would say, where
Ooh.
you stop where you stop trying to be so justifyingly correct about your own philosophy. This is what people have so much trouble to do, which is I've been hurt by women, and I've decided this, and I have all these people online that are going to back me up. I'm going to overpower your unenlightened opinion on the matter, and I'm going to turn this into an argument, and I want to win because there is not a general even sense of sympathy. It's just this is my hurt, and this is what I see. So, you know,
Yeah.
munch it down, everyone.
I just want to put a little bit of an injection into this. The word charity came out of your mouth, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. I'm not being charitable when I'm being nice to a girl who's I don't feel maybe it's just a loaded word to me. I'm not being charitable because I'm receiving too. Charity in my mind is I'm giving because I have and you don't. And so I'm going to
Mm,
give you something. And this is not a charitable thing at all. If I'm expressing sympathy or empathy with another man or a woman, I don't feel like I have something to give to you that you're deficit in. And I'm going to care for you and I'm going to take care of you and I'm going to save you. Not at all. It's not charitable at all because I'm receiving too. I'm I'm getting nurtured too. I'm getting my little boy nurtured by being kind. And and it, I don't know. I just wanted to make that distinction because I don't want anybody to listen to this and think, well, Zan is uh, has these fruits of love and kindness that then he hands them to the other. No, not at all. You know,
right,
like I'm
right.
like I'm holy in some way. No, I'm receiving too. I'm nurturing myself. I need it. I need to know that the world is constructed in that way, at least to some degree. Otherwise, what's the point of anything we're doing? What
Mm,
right? I need to know that there's good people in the world, and she looks like a good person until she demonstrates she's not, and then I'm
Yeah.
done. I'll
So
walk
it's
away
an
fat from guys will say, "Oh, how do I get past the bitch shield?" I walk away so fast. I'm not gonna go in that direction. I walk away. I'm done. See ya. So
so
anyway,
with charity, I think so many of us align that with pity. But like you say, you're
I guess,
receiving as
yeah,
well. So it's not like you're hanging out just giving your
yeah,
friendly ear to anyone that wants to drop their baggage on you and you're going to take it on board. Right, not at all.
no,
But charitable, I think, just means I'm really going to listen to this philosophy without impinging my own upon them and
okay,
trying
yeah,
to arm
gotcha,
wrestle them into being right.
yeah. Just wanted to clarify that. So we've got sympathy. There's pity over there, which nobody likes.
Yeah.
Sympathy over here, which is
Sympathy with
sympathy
starting
is
off with something.
a tendency to want to listen, to receive, to right, to listen in.
Yes. Yes. Mental and curious space.
And then you talked about another level,
Empathy.
which is empathy.
So I think
So how's that different?
empathy is where the body kicks in. So empathy is I'm
So you
gonna
feel it.
feel with the pathos of the other person. Whatever they're feeling, I also feel somehow within me.
Uh, I see. So you embody some of that,
Yeah.
what you've observed and felt. You embody it
This
in a
is where
similar
you
way.
get you gave a little example. This is where you feel I feel touched. When you speak about this, you start feeling emotions and feeling touched in the body. This is my sense of empathy, which is depending on who's asking the question. Some empathy might be mental, but I call that sympathy. But when it comes to empathy like this, for me to have empathy, I need to have a relationship with my own feeling. And if I don't feel anything that happens
Mm,
inside of me, I don't know my own emotional interior, then I can't ever have any empathy for another person. So when I was that guy at high school that was objectivizing everyone that came into the room according to what they were wearing or what they were saying or what scores they got on a test, there's zero empathy because the part of my body that is open to any kind of energy is just my eyes. But as soon as I start to feel
yeah, yeah.
my own feelings, I have that with others. So, for example, if you really want to be touched, but as a man, let's say we have a lot of guys that say I haven't cried in 5 years or cried in 10 years. It's difficult you might have some empathy for people, but it's hard to have a whole lot of empathy if you haven't felt your own grief or your
If
own
you're not in
loss.
tune with your own existential ex feelings and the way you move through life, and yeah, okay, I get it.
Because particularly
So,
for men, we find it very difficult to deal with our sadness and our grief, and therefore that's kind of a portal to so many other emotions. And I'm just going to have an emotionally very shallow experience, and until I go into that a little bit, until I've lost a loved one or I've I've felt these things that I was trying to hide about myself, these
yeah,
inner feelings.
so yeah, I get it.
So you go into that kind of stuff and the empathy comes online almost automatically. And then for women, I think it's more about rage. So if a woman hasn't processed her anger, frustration, rage at men, then
Good luck.
she's going to have a difficult time to feel any empathy for men because anything a man says at her, unless he's walking on eggshells and does everything right all the time, according to her shifting perception of it,
Yeah,
she's just going to look through her eyes at all men in the world and just feel rage and irritation and then blame and judgment that he is triggering these feelings. But it's, that's her lifetime stuff that she has to feel and accept. Women have difficulty to feel rage, I think, just as much as men have a difficulty to feel sadness and grief.
yeah, that's correct for sure. Interesting.
So this is my sense of empathy, and as you know, I've done a lot of embodied work over the years and bring embodiment into my coaching. When men It's kind of the dark side of it. If you get so in your body, um, all of a sudden you feel empathy all of the time, and it becomes very overwhelming. So
Yeah. How can
I've
you
had the experience of going into a room of 100 people in a party and then thinking, oh my God, I really don't want to go because I'm feeling all this stuff. All these people come into
really?
the room with all their feelings. Yeah, there was a
That's so
period
interesting.
that I didn't want to be social because I did so much embodiment work. I became finely tuned to all the emotions inside of me that when I went out onto the street and there was chaos everywhere, I'd be like, I just wanted to retire away from this. I think this is why monks go to the monastery because finally you don't have to feel all that human ego and human pain and these leery emotional things that happen all the time.
Wow.
So
So,
if
so
when a person gets too empathetic, they get overwhelmed.
that would make a lot of sense to me. You have to
Yeah.
keep your bandwidth, to some degree. You got to keep some medicine for yourself, as they say. If you're
So
giving away medicine to everybody constantly, you don't keep it for yourself. You don't
so
protect
how do
yourself
you
in some
be
way.
yeah, so how do you be dynamic about I want to be able to feel what others feel because that's the very thing that makes me feel connected and gives me connection, which is powerful. But then how do I keep a sense of distance or a kind of a protective bubble so that,
Mm.
God, I don't feel too much stuff all the time? And you've had students and alumni over the years that you've seen, and they're like, "Oh my God, I watched I watched this 3 minute music video, and then I was crying for half an hour because the beauty." They come on the group, and they're gushing about, I
Yeah, I'm
saw a
not that
bird,
guy.
I saw a bird
Yeah.
just land on a twig outside of my office this morning, and it moved me so deeply. Men start having this kind of opening when their empathy really opens up.
So what's interesting, because you're talking, Jordan, because this is kind of newish for me. Um, I have this outward looking perspective. So I feel my little boy energy lost and alone, and this girl, I can feel that there's something in me that wants to show her that there's something good out there, as opposed
Hmm.
to weeping into her weepingness, and to soul gaze, and to hold closely her hands and deep dive. That's not me. I, I recognize and I empathize that you're sincere and you're hurt, and you've been hurt in life. I get that. But I'm not going to sit. There's nothing in me that sits there and feels the pain and empathizes on that same level. I'm too delighted with a twinkle in my eye, but I see that, and I can take her hand and say, look what's possible this way, because that's what I do for
Yeah.
myself. I'm not going to sit and wallow. I'm not going
Yeah.
to sit and and share your pain and cry with you. I'm not that guy. I don't have that. But I really do feel it. And guess what? Look what's out there. Look at the treasure out there. Look at the potential for
Mm.
you, for me. And I feel potential for me. So I want you to feel that too. So my whole perspective of empathy is an outward turning to something transcendent beyond me. And I hope you can see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I mean, you've said it. You offer love to the women in the same way you offer love to yourself. So whatever your own
Yeah, that's
inner
right.
dynamic of this is how I'm going to have some empathy for me, you don't noodle around personal content. I
No.
So how did you feel when your dad said that to you? Oh my God, and your boyfriend, your ex-boyfriend,
Yeah,
how
I
did
don't.
you feel all those years? So all that personal story or fleeting in the moment emotion. So I mean, empathy training is a massive thing, and it is as an offshoot
Yeah, I
from
don't
the
have it.
coaching world and the therapeutic world. A lot of guys that we know have been through things like that, and 99% of the empathy work out there is how can we actually share more of this personal content with each other in a way that is safe? So I
Yeah,
share
I don't
my
have that.
Pandora's box
I
of deep,
maybe.
dark secrets with you, and you listen and you take it in
Uh,
and you hold space. This is the whole language, the language and the
hold
culture,
space. Yeah.
conscious thing. He holds space for me while I process and digest and alchemize my inner turmoil and trauma and all the things that are coming up from my recent therapy sessions. I need a man who is going to, hold that space for me. But you're saying you don't noodle around in personal content. You're like, yeah, I hear it sucks. Oh, you had a bad therapy session today. Look what is light and on the
Yeah.
vista for you, right?
Look get excited because we're all broken and we're all sad and we're crying little boys and girls. I get that
Yeah,
and I can feel that. But here's the way forward. Like you remember years ago you did these events with circling type of
yep, yeah,
I can't I've never done it because I can't sit in a circle and like hand on heart. I don't know how to do that. I'm too excited and too, you know, we were lost, we were broken, and she's lost and broken, and that other man is lost and broken. And I like him because he's sincere in his brokenness. He's not trying to be. He just really nobody's ever told him. For instance, nobody's ever helped him, and
yeah.
that's not right. How can I have a good life? You know, I have a good relationship with Deanna, and we're years together now, and we're famously, in my mind, famously, adoring of each other and devotion, and we have just a beautiful relationship. And I look at other relationships and I think, and I here's what I think. I think, how is it? That's not fair that I get to experience that, and they don't. That person doesn't has a broken, like an antagonistic relationship. That's not, how is that? That doesn't seem fair to me. How do I get that and others don't get? That's I have that thought. Strange. I
Hmm.
think, that's not fair. Like if I knew that um, a friend of mine, for instance, or a family member is not having a good experience in their marriage, and they're a good person, and I get to that just so something in me wants to not save it, but and to show that there's a possible way forward. If I write the book, The Alabaster Girls, to show that there's something else that we can go to. We're all broken. We're all broken. We're all sad, crying
Okay.
inside, but we can go somewhere.
So with this
Strange.
thought of it's not fair, why do I get to experience this devotion, this kind of grace, and these other people, good, earnest, seeking people, they don't? This thought, does that is that what fuels your work in the world,
Yeah, I
or
think
at
so,
least,
Jordan. Now I
or at
think
least
about it, yeah.
part of it?
Yeah, for certain. I think that's not fair. How do I get to have this it's possible for others too. That's what bothers me. It's potential. Like if I talk on stage, I'm looking at the audience, I'm thinking if it's possible for me, it's possible for you. And so all of the hurt and all of the anger and all of the betrayals we've had, which I had too, um, instead of trying to resolve it or come to terms with it or sit and give you hold space with you while you share that with me, we just shake hands with it. There's something else. There's a way of looking out this way. That's how I feel. So I don't think I have empathy in the way that it's embodied sympathy. If we were to say
Right,
it's embodied,
right.
I don't I have no time to sit. And having said that, I'll sit, um I don't know. I'm trying to scrape this out of my mind. I don't understand it.
What
But I'm just
when when
too
when when you sit with a woman and she says something that touches you, you feel feelings in your own body. Like you can feel her feelings mirrored. Empathy, I think, is a lot around mirror neurons. So if you're very sad, I'll feel aspects of me that are sad at the same time as you are. I might not cry for you, but sometimes that might happen in a deep state of empathy, embodied empathy.
yeah, for me I will sit and quote unquote hold space. I'll sit quietly because I don't know how to solve her problem. Like if she's got a real something that's really hurtful for her, and
Yeah,
I will sit there and I'll hold her hand and I will say I don't know what you're experiencing. I haven't gone through it, for instance, like she was abused or something like that. But I'm here, and all I can do is just be present with you and just and so I do. I'll sit for an hour. It's not like I'm not like I'm let's go. I'll sit and hold space, but I have no solution. But I will stay present. I will stay present. And but her I don't feel like the childhood trauma coming up in me because and I'm mirroring it or mirroring it. I can't say the word.
yeah.
I don't feel like I'm mirroring it. I'm more like I don't know. I just really get it. I can't solve your problem. I don't have a
Yeah.
solution for you, but I really get it that you want, that you have this trauma, this pain, and you don't, and you wish you, it's not fair. That's, I think, to me, that's what I think the most. It's not, how is that possible? I had a really bad childhood and a traumatic childhood, and I'm good to my girl. I'm good to people I meet. I'm not in. I wake up in the morning. I'm jumping and singing. I don't wake up grumpy, sort of thing. And when I recognize that another man or a woman has had the same kind of trauma as me in the past, how is it? That's not fair that I get to be happy and move past the childhood and they don't. That's not right. It doesn't seem fair to me. How do I get to be happy in the morning and they don't? That doesn't that I don't like that.
So you do
That's
hold space. You're not lighting the incense and making the cacao and straightening your spine and sitting there with your fingers in little mudras holding space. But in your own certain way, you will remain and be still and be present
for
as she
certain,
speaks,
for
which is
certain.
on her
Yeah.
heart. But what I'm also hearing is that you won't. Uh, it's not that I don't think you're intolerant to it, but you're not going to spend a lot of time dissecting all the very personal,
No.
interpersonal things that she's going through.
No,
But
because it
you're going to
doesn't
point
matter.
her towards right.
It doesn't
Something else
matter.
matters in that case. In your moment of
Yeah,
empathy, something else matters that is not strictly personal to her or to you.
that's right. I think in I think in I think in phrases or concepts like salvation, there's salvation available for you. And I really mean that word in the way that we think it is. There's salvation from this hurt. And there's a way forward. Um, as opposed to, I don't know, like something in me is has got that element of, you read about Casanova and stuff. Yeah, when I was a kid, I read about Casanova, and he was in jail. He was kicked out of the seminary at 14 years old because he connected with a couple sisters, and the way in connected, yeah, exactly like you're thinking. Got kicked out of the seminary. He went through life with no money. He was in jail in the Leads in Venice. He was sentenced to 5 years, and after a year and a half, full of fleas and rats and stuff, he was young. He escaped. And instead of saying, okay, well, man, I'm a victim and my health is broken and that happened to me, he turned it into a story. Hey, you're going to love this story. Guess what happened to me when I was 18 years old? He turned it into a story. And I thought, if he can do it, I can do it. I can take you know, most of us are wishing that our childhood would change. It's not going to change. Shake hands with the past. It's not going to change. And we go to therapy to change our childhood. No, it's not going to change. It was a
Yeah.
broken, sad, abusive time, and you shake hands with it. This is the first time in history that we've had talk therapy. 120 years of talk therapy, and are we better off mentally? You know what I mean? It's everybody had bad childhoods. Everybody was sad. Everybody was abused. Everybody was betrayed. Everybody was starved. Everybody was, you know, cast out of their home, and they went and created the cities and the iPhones and the things that we have in the West. They created all that not in spite of their bad childhoods. They said, that sucked, and here I go. What else is there? What else can I make of myself? They reinvent themselves. You have to reinvent
Yeah.
yourself. I think there's a lot of guys we coach that are in their 40s that haven't reinvented themselves, and they just stay in the same pain and trauma, and they manifest it in relationships. You've got to shake hands with the past at some point and reinvent yourself. Every great life has had in it a great renunciation.
Or they become subtly more articulate every single year about the same particular patterns they're in without
Or
this
yeah,
recreation.
they'll
What
take a
I'm
program or sorry Jordan, they'll do something and that's very introspective type of, I don't know, silent retreat or something like that. And they say, yeah, I got so much. The phrase they say is, I got so much shit out of my body, but there's so much more to get out. I think, huh? So I got to take it again, and I haven't attained yet. I haven't erased, but nobody's erased it. And you're not going to erase it. You've got to say, okay, that sucked. Let's go. That's, I don't know.
I'm laughing because a lot of the therapists of the world that you're not quite denouncing, but you're not recommending that people uptake their services. A lot of the therapists of the world will be saying, "Wow, Zan, you've stumbled upon the goal of narrative therapy, actually within yourself,
Oh,
which is to turn the broad story of your life from cradle to grave into an overarching narrative that fills you with a positive energy, a generative energy with which you can step forward and create something beneficial
okay.
for the rest of society, right? So whether you do
Yeah.
that across 100 sessions over a couple of years with a therapist, or you do it within your own soul and your own contemplation, you've achieved the outcome of narrative therapy.
Okay.
I am no one to anoint you, but this is what I see. So I
There you
announce
go.
it. But yeah, and the core is you pick up all the different pieces and the shards of the fragments of the things that have happened to you in your life and the way that that shows up today and creates limitations,
Yes.
and the whole thing gets turned into something else, which is a story, and and further than that, an energizing genesis of a myth that you now live, and a past that empowers you with a gift, like the
Yeah.
gift beneath the deepest human gift beneath the sacred wound, as they call it, and then that is going to power you on into the future to give forth and generate new worlds for the masses within your kingdom.
It's like, a guy asked me one time in a workshop years ago, he said, what do you do? What do you do about sadness? And sadness is the component of beauty. Sadness is our lot in life. Sadness is what gives the chiaroscuro element of the shadow that makes the light stand out. And so sadness is part of my life, part of your life, is part of everybody's life. And and I really strongly believe that all creative spark comes from the element of sadness that we wear in our existential fears. What any young man or older man or any woman needs to do is accept, to just accept. I have some really uh, pain and hurt in me, for instance. I'm going to accept that because it is what it is, and I'm going to forgive myself everything. Forgiveness, acceptance, forgiveness of ourselves. Because you said something really important earlier in this podcast. How how you said it about me. The way you relate to your own childhood lost child is the way you relate to others. But I think that's the same
Hmm.
with everybody.
Yeah.
Every man relates in his relationship to the woman, his wife, or his girlfriend, the way he treats his internal self. So if he doesn't like his little boy in him, he's not going to like the little girl in her. And I really think that you have to forgive. You have to ask forgiveness of yourself, and you've got to take care of yourself because then only then can you have that empathy. If don't have empathy for your own little lost self, then you can't have empathy for others. Then you're judgmental if you're judgmental of yourself, you're judgmental of others.
Yeah. That's the crux of it.
Yes.
Empathy for all the different parts of yourself and the old selves that got picked on, ostracized, kicked out. If you can
And
start
not
to have
blaming
empathy for
yourself
that.
and not accusing yourself. We're the greatest accusers of ourselves. The great accuser, which is the devil in the Bible, the great accuser. We're the greatest accusers of ourselves. We accuse ourselves of everything. You've got to have, you've got to like yourself. You've got to take care of yourself because nobody's taking care of that little boy. You've got to forgive yourself everything, everything. Nobody taught us how to do life. You didn't know. You did not know. How can you say that you're so wrong? Nobody taught you when you're 9 years old or 12 years old or 16 years old or 18 years old that this is the way you should do it. Nobody said that, you know, we didn't have that kind of. So I just think that you've got to forgive yourself everything and you've got to accept. You've got to accept your past. You've got to accept the things that are hurtful for you. You got to accept it. Okay. Yeah. And don't let it define you. That's the key. And I'm not a
Mm.
therapist. Maybe I'm a narrative therapist.
What I've got a few different things I want to throw in to sum up over this last bit. The first is my sense is if I can make friends, shake hands with my psyche, as you said last week, and befriend and accept all these different parts of me that I didn't like over the years. The thing about liking women or loving women or having empathy for women automatically happens as an outcrop
Yeah,
or an outgrowing of that very process. I
I think so.
realize that women are actually not out to get me. I can actually have enough space to see that they're going through their own stuff. And because I've healed all the parts of me that got rejected and they don't hurt me anymore, then wow, actually, I'm free of all of that stuff, that darker stuff that was clouding my vision.
That's 100% nailing it, as far as I'm concerned.
I want to mention, because
Yeah.
you said
Wow.
sadness, you had this participant in a workshop, you said, what about my sadness? I speak to many people like this as well. I think sadness also can be a bleeding out of grief. And if things that have happened to you as a child, as a young man, that have filled you with grief that you've never been able to process, there will be a residing sadness that tinges almost everything that you do. And I
Yes.
had this to a certain extent. And grief is the place where men usually don't want to go and feel because all the conditioning around don't cry because then you're gonna be a pussy or like a little girl or something like that. So men
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Of course.
it's all unconscious by this point. A lot of men are like, I would like to have a good cry, I just don't know how to do it. I think a good movie is one of the best ways to open you up. If you don't have access to a breath work, session near you, watch a few tear-jerking movies. But grief, I think, is the most badass emotion. If you can feel that and let the whole thing run through you, it's completely badass. It to go through
Hmm.
loss and feel the grief and feel just how it courses through you, and beyond that is the deepest conviction I think you will ever likely know as a man. To feel the things that you have loved taken from you, almost like the Kipling poem now, to feel the things that have been
Yeah.
taken and stolen from you, and to allow that pain to course through you, and then to be like, wow, I feel so much grief, therefore I feel so much love, and I feel so clear about this grief and this love that I'm convinced, like I will stand at on the mountain and be crucified. There's nothing worse that the outer public can now do to me. I cannot be embarrassed or shamed in such a way that that's going to hurt more than all this grief that I'm going through. It turns you into the most badass, conviction forged man imaginable. I think
Yeah.
that the recipe for something is within this. So I love grief, and in
There's a
a fierce warrior-like way.
there's a book by C.S. Lewis that not many people know about. It's a small book, and I've read it several times. It's called The Grief Explored or Explained. I can't remember what it's called. And he wrote it as a personal sort of a journal after his wife died, and it's remarkable. Everyone should read it. And it's very much this. It's the he was wrestling with God, like because I lost my wife, that beautiful relationship I had, and he said something remarkable when everything's going beautifully and everything's all good and stuff like that. Um, we have a great relationship with God. He's smiling on us. The sun is shining. God's blessings upon us. We're walking with God in our mind. He's answering our prayers. And when something fundamental happens, the deep, deep grief, like you lose something that is so essential to your heart and life, and you pray to God, God is absent.
Mhm.
Crickets, and you don't get the resolution. You don't. And he wrote this in his book, C.S. Lewis. It's just incredible. And and when you need God the most, it's just like, Deus absentus, it's like, where's God? And I remember reading about this preacher years ago. He wrote this. His two little girls died in a flood or something like that. His two little twin daughters, and he was a very well known preacher, Christian preacher, so that. And he wrote that he had his face into the dirt in grief, praying to God because of the great loss, and there's no answer, and um, God answers our prayers is what he's essentially saying. C.S. Lewis said this too. When everything's beautiful, he's benevolent. We feel his presence. We feel the Holy Spirit's presence. But when in grief, in that devoid sense of grief, we feel nothing. We're all alone in our grief. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Wow. I think about that a lot. So yeah, it's not like I'm happy-go-lucky, rose-colored glasses, and you know, who was it? The Candide from Voltaire. Candide was like, that's the
Mm.
best possible world. Pangloss, Dr. Pangloss in the book Candide by Voltaire. He's like, it's the best possible world. He gets his arm cut off. Yeah, it's the best possible world. I'm not that, but
Yeah.
because I do think about these things. I think about loss and grief and sadness a lot. I'm writing about it right now, you know. But there's something anyway. This is super interesting.
We're in the, I mean, deeper throes of empathy here. I, you asked me about the workshops that I used to do about a decade ago. When I was becoming, for the first time, very interested in my own feelings and where they came from and how they worked, I was also very drawn to people that were the same, that were in a similar part of
Hmm.
their exploration. So I became very interested in the personal, what I was feeling, and then with women and with in my coaching practice as well, what the women in my life were feeling, what the men in my life were feeling. And at some point, I became less interested. It was like that work, that inner exploration felt done. Everything that
Okay.
needed to be opened got opened. And then I moved on with a greater sense of my curiosity went elsewhere. There's only so long that I can introspect and look at my own belly button
Naval. Yeah.
and wonder about why I am like in the end I guess I realized I wasn't that interesting to myself, right? And then other individual people, there's only so much I actually want to listen to their personal stuff. There's only so much.
So much. Yeah. And
And
then it's
then
time to
after
go.
that, it's like, what are you going to do? What
It's time for
compels you?
action.
Or what is the thing beyond you
Yeah.
that you really want to be pulled towards? So that there's a phase of this empathy and emotional process. And then I would say after a couple of years of it, you should hit the ocean's bottom and be able to identify what's of most meaning. And I'm
That's
struck,
interesting.
you mentioned this book by C.S. Lewis. And the thought that I had when you talked about that was, wow, one book by C.S. Lewis has probably saved you 50 narrative therapy sessions. The money, but the time and the year of figuring it out. And are you even going to find that therapist? Well, you find the book instead, and it fills your psyche with a pantheon of different examples. The tragedy, the good, resourceful, heroic examples. Your psyche is full of these things from literature, and you can contemplate that. So I think you were assisted by the
Yeah.
books you found along the way. And
Yes.
so where I bottom out is, and I think we're very similar in this regard, can I create something like that is a time capsule of a particular energy or a particular healing balm that's going to persist throughout the ages? Like, what if someone found my version of the grief explored and just came across
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
And can I distill something that such a pure essence of a thing that this will be a reference or a turning point for someone on a particular journey?
That's yeah, that's really interesting, because you kind of wrote it privately. I think it was published under a different name, and he didn't set out to publish it. He was just trying to process his grief.
Hmm.
And it's a phenomenal book, and it's very short. But to me, it's a phenomenal exploration of real grief, which we're all going to go through or have gone through. And but it's a hopeful book. So yeah, I mean, these things are these things. This is the way life is.
So the limitation, I want to go back to the model that this teacher gave me all these years ago. The limitation of empathy is that we just sit around kind of soul gazing and sharing our different feelings, including our griefs and so on. And we could do that forever, basically.
And feel
A new
forever, yeah.
day, a new feeling. how are you today? Well, I feel a little bit of me feels this, a little bit of me feels this. What about you? And all of a sudden you go into this bubble together of more and more feelings. Um, and so empathy doesn't actually do anything. It feels with. You feel very deeply and you feel with, and that can be healing that someone gets you and feels with you. It's a phenomenal skill,
There's no call
but
to
it
action in empathy.
it doesn't go anywhere by itself. And
Right.
so the final piece of this teaching was compassion is actually where the empathy or the depth to which you feel as another person expresses takes you to a place where you are compelled into a form of action,
I gotcha.
and you can't quite
That's where I
stop
go.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I identify that a lot with you, which is I see these people on the side of the party. They feel, to use your words, not included. You see the unincluded, and you're not like, oh no, I feel the grief of when I was unincluded at the age of 11 and all these stories
No.
from school. It's just like, no, snap, get in here right now. Come in,
Yeah.
tell us something
Let's
about
go.
yourself. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
And you
That's
bring this
exciting.
person right in. But the root of it, I think, is compassion.
Okay. Well, I go to the action phase for certain. Like I want to include. Yeah. So compassion. No one's ever said about me that you're a compassionate person, but I guess that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, because
You
I
know.
think we have this sense, this mushy sense of compassion just being pity or the endless shoulder to cry on. And
Yeah.
there's a real knife edge through this, which is really dangerous because I think you have, as part of your love for women, you have an extraordinary compassion for women, which is I'm gonna show up as someone powerful in your life because I feel on some level what it's like, and I'm inspired on some level
Yeah.
to be this particular person for you. I think this is a definition of compassion,
Okay.
and it's actually fierce and it's driving and it's empathic and it's caring. The issue with compassion is, or how we perceive compassion is, if you if you feel something strong in your heart for a woman and you're called to action, on the one hand, you can be this man that's different from every other man out there in a strong, compelling, beautiful way. But you can also go in the direction of the white knight savior complex, which is
Yeah.
she showed me the crocodile tears. I something in me got triggered, the great protector, and now I want to take this
Problem
girl out or
solved.
resolve her problems for her.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
before I know
Yeah.
it, I'm stuck in this goop of um, the 10-year white knight, which is I'm in a relationship that drains me, or I'm doing things for this woman that drain me. Um, and I'm just so compassionate, but it's not a, this is what I want to discern here. This is not a pity compassion or a, oh wow, if I just like help her out, then she's going to like me and give me some love in return. This is actually impersonal, which is I want to be like this. You want to include people on the unincluded from the side of the party, even though they might not ever give you anything back.
Yeah.
It's not.
Compassion is what you're saying. Compassion is kind of a one-way thing. It's giving without entitlement or needing some validation in return or a thanks. Like for someone to thank you because you were kind to them or expect that, or why didn't they thank me? You know?
Or pay you back with kisses or sex
Or
because
yeah,
you
yeah,
drove them
exactly.
home.
Yeah. That's not compassion. That's transaction.
Yeah, transaction under some nebulous, mushy feelings for sure.
Yes.
But this kind
Yeah.
of ties in with what you were saying before. People tell you nice things about the alabaster girl all the time, and you're like, is it the praise or the thanks you get in the outside world that moves you or compels you to the action, or is it the creation of the thing in and of itself, perhaps as an act of compassion?
Well, I think that this entire conversation, which is kind of a new exploration for me, like I've learned a lot from the way you frame things. Um, it really underscores why my compunction to write the Alabaster Girl and to write other things, as opposed to it's not because of the praise I get. There's nothing in that at all. we've talked about that before. It's more like just it's I'm ministering to myself. I'm ministering to myself. I feel like I'm saying something to myself for whatever. Maybe this is my own therapy. Maybe I'm a therapist for myself. Maybe this is how I resolve my childhood. I guess I don't know. I don't think it on that level, but maybe that is the underpinnings or the undercurrent of what's going on with me. Because I don't get validation. I get intellectual satisfaction when someone says, I read your book 3 times and it meant a lot to me. But I don't feel like I have accomplished something. Not yet. So there's something else. I feel small, I feel small and like I'm not connecting into something to really say something really strong.
Mm.
Yeah, strange. I feel like my efforts are small. And they could be better, could be bigger. Weird, huh?
It's
Yeah.
funny when you said that, the question that popped up to me was, do you feel like you're failing or that you're behind somehow? And then you said, I feel small.
Not failing. I don't feel like I'm failing at all. I just feel like I'm I haven't tapped into what I really want to say. Yeah. I'm missing something, some fundamental element. Strange.
If you
Yeah, I
had
don't know.
to, if you had to grope around for it now, like what, I mean, we were really on the spot, but where do you sense the deeper gear or the thing to tap into might be? In what basic direction?
Um, well, that's for sure the transcendent side of life, like what the fundamental questions. The alabaster girl. The fundamental question of what is that aspect of the alabaster girl? Um, why are we here? What's a life well worth living, or what's a life well lived? What's a life that we can look back and say, hey, I did that. That fuels me. I want to know these things. And when I say I feel small, it feels like I can't. I detect that there's something magnificent in the ether to grab onto artistically, and I can't get it. Can't quite get it. I feel like I'm not adequate to pull it down and to share it with myself and with others. Something like that. I know I've been crazily philosophical on this, but I feel like I haven't, I'm not worthy to grab something and bring it down in some way. It's strange, huh? And I know that I never will feel it because even, you know, Da Vinci on his deathbed said his last words were, I failed God and man. I failed my efforts to God and to man. Da Vinci of all people. So um, Jung said the same thing when he was dying. He said, "Man, everything I tried to figure out, I couldn't figure any of it out. I'm what a waste of my life trying to figure things out, and I couldn't get it. I couldn't articulate what I'm trying to say. You know, so maybe I'll
Mm.
have that angst, but I really feel like there's something bigger to be understood. That's what I'm trying to say. That I'm trying to understand for myself. So I can't put words on it, Jordan. I don't feel like a failure because I'm sincere and I'm doing what I can. And I don't feel like I'm behind. I feel like I haven't topped like if I haven't got a second book out yet, it's not because I'm dawdling. It's because I haven't grokked something that has to be into it. For certain, I feel that.
So when you say you're small, you mean you are small in the size of thing that you're able to express at present. It, which is different to I'm small in that my audience is relatively limited and are not as big
No,
as,
not
I
that
don't
at
know, this
all.
guy who's got 7 million subscribers.
No, I don't mean small like that. No, 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 no,
So
no.
you're small in an artistic way. Like if you compare yourself to
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis, probably he's a bit bigger with his output. This kind
No,
of
it's not
like he
output.
tapped it.
No, it's nothing to do with
Okay.
output because I think that
Or
my
or
output
or
is,
the yeah.
I think my output is maybe it's a small readership, but in my mind, it encompasses the world. It's my output is huge in my mind. That's not it. I haven't tapped into the essence of what I'm trying to say, and I can feel it, and I see it on the corner of my eye. There's something stronger to be said than what I've said in the past. That's what I'm trying to say. There's something more urgent and relevant and salvific than what I'm saying. And it's like I have to have the courage to go there. Yeah. To really, yeah. Because I can distract myself pretty well,
Yeah.
you know. So I mean this is good. I mean it's what I'm sitting in, what I'm wrestling with. That's why what I'm trying to write about. So who
Yeah.
knows? What a
It's a
wide-ranging
juicy
conversation.
it's a juicy cliffhanger. The courage to have the courage to really go there and what that
Yeah,
means and what that might entail. That that's quite fascinating to hear.
for certain. I have a sense of that. That there's something
Do
to be
you,
just,
I mean,
yeah.
you've mentioned different people over the years, but I just want to check again. Like, do you have a sense of, I don't know, artistic or spiritual lineage of people behind you or elders that have tapped into stuff that you think they're big? Like, can you name 5, 10 people through history that were big and they tapped into something that had a satisfactory salvific effect?
Well, I got this whole spectrum of parts of people.
Yeah,
Like I think that I always talk about Casanova because he was such an influence to me as a child. But he was, if you looked at through modern lens, I mean, he was a scofflaw. He was a shyster. He was, he scammed people, and he was a gambler and a degenerate. If you look at it through the modern lens, but I look at him through the
yeah,
lens of the mythic quality of the narration. What's the life of a mythic life and things like that. Uh, so it's just fragments of people, even Nabokov, like his writing style makes me think there's poetry somewhere. There's poetry out there. And some people bring down poetry to the world and most people don't. And some people do. And that inspires me to I want to have a very poetic life. And so my writing, I want it to be poetic without being poetry. And that's a narcissistic way of looking at things, maybe, because I could just put information out, but I can't. Information to me is not enough. The feel and flow and the musicality of something. Like a sentence to me has to have a lilt, has to feel like this. It has to have a cadence, and because that's the message itself. The feel of the sentence is more important than what it says in words, in my mind. It's the look and feel on the page. That's important to me. And I know I've
mm.
got this conceit. Um, that's why I'm not a prolific writer because I really like it's music to me. And I don't know. I just feel like there's something stronger that to be tapped into that hasn't been that will be tapped into, but only if you have courage and are willing to go there. I don't know, and I
And
don't know what that means.
the first thing we know about the courage is if we can get out of distraction, then there's a higher heightened chance of facing that down. What is the
Yeah,
courage and what is the place that one must have courage in order to go?
yeah, because distraction's easy. You can fill up your life. A day could fly by. You're like, yeah, okay. But I don't know.
So this topic of sympathy, empathy, and compassion can be equated to mind, body, and spirit, or mind, body, and the
Uh,
spiritual heart. So sympathy is I don't feel, but I can
think.
understand and be kind
Yeah.
towards your circumstance or your philosophy. The empathy is I feel all these things in my body and I'm fully in an emotional ride as I am with you without action. But then compassion is something in my heart gets activated in a way that is transcendental and spiritual, but also has a component of action, which is I'm not so touched that I just go into nirvana,
Yeah.
but I feel something in some deep place of my heart that's even beyond what I'm able to comprehend in my mind, and that gives me an impulse for action. So it's kind of like sacred purpose. Those words are a little flimsy compared to the actual thing,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the something of the spiritual heart launches into action, and
Interesting.
from there you get the Mother Teresa's of the world who quit everything and go off and massage the feet of the lepers and whatever you feel inclined to do with your searing fire of God.
There you go. Interesting, Jordan. This is a thoughtful conversation to me. I'm ready to go do some writing.
Good
Wow.
luck. I wish you no distractions
There
and
you go.
yeah, I would love to hear from the listeners what you take away from this. And in particular, if you've been wrestling with that question of how do I develop empathy for women, or if you're a woman and you're asking how do I develop empathy for men, which is very, very difficult for me, given what I've seen and experienced. If you have a takeaway from this episode, I'd love to read it. So feel free to post or send it to info@arzamorata.com. And we'll be back next week with whatever surprises come up next.
Yeah, post your comments on YouTube, um, wherever else this gets posted. We have a few ideas, like, but contact us. Come join our membership. Be in this conversation all the time. Be in this sense of confusion all the time.